It's been almost 28 years since the 1993 General Assembly. In recognition of the 200th anniversary of American Universalism, the theme was Universalism for such a time as this. And with a renewed commitment to anti-racism, a whole day had been set aside for racial justice programming. I had been elected to serve as president in 1992 for what was then known as the Thomas Jefferson District. And Dr. Leon Spencer, an active African-American lay leader, was then a member of the Unitarian Universalist Association's Board of Trustees, representing the Thomas Jefferson District. Hosting General Assembly is a big deal, and naturally, we were quite excited. Leon and I were imagining standing together at the opening ceremony, welcoming attendees to our district. We wanted to show how we, a Black man and a white woman, worked side by side in the Thomas Jefferson District. However, nothing came of it. You see, the General Assembly Planning Committee turned us down. Because 1993 also marked the 250th anniversary of the birth of Thomas Jefferson, the TJ District Board decided to sponsor a worship service in his honor. And the GA Planning Committee scheduled a Thomas Jefferson ball, birthday ball. In early May, the program booklet arrived in our mailboxes, as was the custom back then, with information about all the events. The blurb about the Saturday evening birthday ball suggested people attend in period costume. What I'm about to share with you now, we in the TJ District did not at the time know anything about. A month or so before GA, members of Community Church of New York gathered for a pre-GA meeting. Hope Johnson and her twin sister, Janice Marie, both members of that congregation, were there. And when Janice Marie read about the TJ birthday ball, she said out loud, "Well, what am I supposed to wear?" That question prompted her minister to alert the General Assembly Planning Committee. She wrote a letter expressing concern, but received no response. Days before GA was about to begin, I learned that something about the birthday ball was amiss, but no one seemed to know what. On Thursday, June 24th, 1993, UUs from near and far arrived in Charlotte, and that evening, after the opening celebration, a group of Black UUs met and together composed a letter of protest. The next morning at the plenary session, Hope Johnson stepped up to the procedural microphone and requested a point of personal privilege, which the then moderator, Natalie Gulbrandsen, granted. With a steady voice, Hope read the letter written the night before, and I quote, "We, members of the African American Unitarian Universalist ministers, and our many friends of differing racial and cultural backgrounds are outraged by and strenuously protest the inclusion of events described as the most famous Unitarian in the world and the Thomas Jefferson birthday ball in this UUA General Assembly program. And later, the question, must African Americans attend such events in rags and chains? End of quote. The plenary came to a screeching halt. At that point, I was sitting next to my minister. He was remembering a General Assembly 20-some years earlier when a group of UUs staged a walkout following the decision by the UUA Board of Trustees to rescind on a promise to fund the Black Affairs Council. The resulting walkout threatened to split our association apart, and my minister was terrified that the same thing was about to happen again. My personal reaction, listening to Hope reading the letter of protest, was, wait, that is my district's namesake you're talking about. For a moment, I wrestled with what to do. I could simply melt into the background and do absolutely nothing and leave it up to others to take responsibility to do something about it. Still, being district president was very real to me. And the feeling of responsibility and a call to participate propelled me forward. I decided to look for Leon, but right after I found him, he was summoned up to the podium where Natalie Gulbrandsen, the moderator, and other leaders had gathered. For a moment, I stood there looking up at the VIPs. Then I took a deep breath and stepped up. I walked over and joined the group. To allow the business of General Assembly's plenary session to continue, the moderator asked us to talk things over and return in an hour to report back to the plenary session. After finding a quiet space, we, 13 of us, gathered in a circle. And when someone suggested we pray, we took each other's hands and paused in silence. Then we prayed for wisdom, courage, and guidance. Even though the anger was deep, the pain raw, and the grief great, we listened deeply to each other. We talked about Thomas Jefferson and the invitation to the birthday ball. And we talked about the opening celebration of GA, which failed to include African American Universalists, like the Reverend Joseph H. Jordan, who in 1889 was the first African American man ordained into the Universalist ministry. We agreed that there was no point in passing blame or pointing fingers. We thought what had happened presented an opportunity to practice our Unitarian Universalist faith. When our hour was up, the members of the group asked me to be the first to report back. I reluctantly accepted, and only on one condition: that Leon and I stand together. Back at the plenary, where more than 3,000 UUs were anxiously awaiting, the tension was palpable. Leon and I walked up to the lectern, and we stood together. Before saying anything about our findings, I shared a little bit about myself, my Swedish heritage, and the bad reputation of Vikings. The words flowed with an ease that surprised me, and I could feel the collective tension in the hall begin to dissolve. On behalf of the group of 13, I reported that our recommendation was that no event be canceled. Instead, we asked all in attendance to act in accordance with our shared UU values, and that we should all make our own decisions about what events to attend or not. What we did was by no means perfect. Many people were disappointed and angry about our recommendations. But what I heard over and over again was a deep appreciation for how this conflict had been handled.